She was just a delivery girl until she changed the Millionaire's baby's diaper. Ashley Johnson climbed the marble steps of the Beverly Hills mansion with a heavy heart and the thermal backpack weighing on her shoulders. It was almost 10 at night, and this was her third delivery of the day, after working 6 hours as a cleaner and another 4 caring for her bedridden mother with severe arthritis. When she rang the doorbell, she heard the desperate cries of a baby echoing through the house. The man who opened the door had messy hair, a wrinkled shirt, and deep dark circles under his eyes. His irritated eyes sized her up with clear impatience. "Finally, you're 15 minutes late," complained Bradley Thompson, a construction tycoon. "My food must be cold. I'm sorry, sir, but traffic was bad on the interstate and I don't want excuses. Where's my order?" Ashley handed over the bags, trying to ignore the increasingly loud cries coming from upstairs. The sound unsettled her deeply, stirring a maternal instinct she'd tried to bury for 2 years. "Your baby is crying a lot," she said, unable to hold back. "So what? That's none of your business," Bradley snapped. "You can leave." But the crying intensified, turning into a desperate wail that made Ashley instinctively step toward the stairs. "Sir, can I help? I have experience with kids." "You?" he scoffed. "People like you don't know how to take care of anything properly. If you did, you wouldn't be delivering food at 10 at night." The words stung like a slap, but Ashley swallowed her pride. She needed this job. She needed every job she could get to pay for her mother's medicine and the mounting bills. "All right, sir, have a good night." She was almost at the door when she heard a loud noise from upstairs, followed by an angry shout. The baby's cries had turned hysterical. "Damn it, that stupid nanny bailed on me today of all days," Bradley muttered, stomping up the stairs. Ashley hesitated at the door. Every maternal instinct screamed at her to go back and help, but the man had made it clear he didn't want her help. Still, she couldn't leave knowing a child was suffering. After a few minutes, she heard heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. Bradley reappeared, more desperate than before. "Look, you said you have experience with babies?" "I do. I've taken care of plenty of kids in my life." He looked her up and down again, clearly reluctant. "The nanny left me this morning. I can't get this baby to stop crying and—" He paused, as if admitting he needed help was a personal humiliation. "How much would you charge to stay here an hour until I can get him to sleep?" "You don't have to pay me," Ashley said immediately. "I'll help just because, well, I don't like seeing a child suffer." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now back to the story. Bradley led her through the luxurious foyer, past a living room that looked like it belonged in a home decor magazine. Everything screamed money: the Italian leather sofa, the massive painting on the wall, the crystal chandelier casting golden light. As she climbed the grand wooden staircase, Ashley tried not to feel intimidated by the contrast between this world and hers. Her home in South Bronx had 3 small rooms and furniture she'd bought second-hand over the years. "His room is here," Bradley said, pushing open a light wood door. What Ashley saw took her breath away. The baby's nursery was a dream come true. A solid wood crib with golden details, wallpaper with delicate teddy bear prints, a musical mobile spinning gently above the crib. There were more toys in that room than she could afford to buy for all the children on her block in an entire year. At the center of all that perfection, a baby of about 6 months was crying desperately, red-faced from the effort. He lay in the crib with a visibly soiled diaper, tiny fists clenched and flailing in the air. "I can't change this diaper," Bradley admitted, looking embarrassed. "I tried 3 times and—" "It's disgusting." Without hesitation, Ashley approached the crib. The moment her hands touched the baby to lift him, something extraordinary happened. He stopped crying instantly. His dark little eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "Wow. How did you do that?" Bradley asked, impressed. "Babies can sense when someone knows what they're doing," she replied, steadying her voice to hide the emotion washing over her. Carrying the baby to the changing table, Ashley got to work with precise, careful movements. Her hands trembled slightly as she removed the dirty diaper, cleaned his delicate skin, and applied the right ointment. That's when she saw it. On the baby's right thigh, tiny but unmistakable, was a crescent-shaped birthmark, a mark identical to the one her own daughter had when she was born 2 years ago. Before, the world seemed to spin around Ashley. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the baby powder. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at that small, achingly familiar mark. It couldn't be, it was impossible. Her daughter had... Everything okay? Bradley's voice sounded distant, as if coming from far away. Yes, she managed to reply, forcing her hands to keep working. Just finishing up here. But nothing was okay, nothing at all. As she fastened a clean diaper, Ashley fought against the memories she'd tried to bury for 2 years. The public hospital, the premature birth, the doctors saying her baby hadn't made it, that there were complications. There, she said, placing the baby back in the crib. The child looked at her once more with those piercing eyes, as if trying to tell her something. Then he yawned and closed his little eyes, finally at peace. Amazing, Bradley murmured. He hasn't slept in hours. Ashley stood frozen, staring at the baby's serene face. His tiny, upturned nose was exactly how she'd imagined her daughter's would have been. The rosy lips, the delicate eyebrows. What's his name? She asked, trying to sound casual. Ethan Thompson. That's a beautiful name. How old is he? 6 months next week. He was born premature, but the doctors said he's developed perfectly. 6 months, born premature. The coincidences piled up like stones in Ashley's chest. She had to get out of there before Bradley noticed something was wrong. Well, he's asleep now. I think you'll get a few hours of peace. Thank you, really, Bradley said, and for the first time his voice held genuine gratitude. You saved my night. What's your name? Ashley Johnson. Well, Ashley, you've got a gift with kids. If you know anyone looking for babysitting work, let me know. I pay well. She nodded and headed for the door, but couldn't resist one last glance back. The baby slept peacefully, one tiny hand curled around the pale blue sheet. As she walked downstairs, Ashley's legs felt weak. She needed to leave, to get home, to process what she'd just seen. But as she reached the door, Bradley called out again. Ashley, wait. Can I ask you something personal? She turned, her heart pounding. Do you have children? The question hit like a punch to the gut. Ashley closed her eyes for a second, gathering strength to respond. I had a daughter. She didn't survive childbirth. I'm so sorry, he said, and it seemed genuine. That's why you knew how to take care of Ethan so well. You have a mother's instinct. If only he knew how much those words hurt. Ashley just nodded and murmured a goodbye, leaving the mansion with hurried steps. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and heavy. She walked to her motorcycle, put on her helmet, and stood there for a few minutes trying to steady her breathing. It couldn't be her daughter. It was impossible. The doctors had clearly said the baby hadn't survived. She'd signed papers, received the death certificate. But she'd never seen the body, never said goodbye. At the time, she'd been so shattered, so lost in grief, that she hadn't questioned anything. She'd trusted the doctors, the nurses, the system. She'd accepted the tragedy and tried to move on, even though part of her had gone with the daughter she'd never gotten to know. But that birthmark, it was exactly the same. It couldn't be a coincidence. The ride back home to South Bronx had never felt so long. Ashley drove on autopilot, her mind racing with possibilities that seemed too crazy to be true. What if her daughter hadn't... What if someone... No, she said aloud, shaking her head. You're delirious, Ashley. The pain is making you see things that aren't there. But when she got home and found her mother asleep in the living room, where she'd been spending nights since she could no longer climb the stairs, Ashley couldn't shake the image of those little dark eyes staring at her, as if they recognized her. She sat in the small kitchen, still in her delivery uniform, and dredged up every detail of her daughter's birth from her memory. It had been a difficult delivery, with complications. The baby was premature, only 7 months. She vaguely remembered seeing her daughter for a few seconds before the doctors took her to the neonatal ICU. And then came silence. Hours passed. A young doctor she'd never seen before came to give her the news. Respiratory complications. a heart too small. She hadn't made it. At the time, Ashley had been alone. The baby's father had disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. She had no family except her mother, who had been hospitalized around the same time with an arthritis flare-up. She'd been vulnerable, lost, with no one to support her or question the doctors on her behalf. They'd rushed her to sign the papers. They'd said it was better this way, that she shouldn't see, that it would be too traumatic. And in her grief and confusion, she'd trusted them. But what if... Ashley shook her head again. She couldn't indulge in these fantasies. She couldn't put herself through that pain again. She had to be strong, had to take care of her mother, had to work. But when she lay down on the narrow bed she shared with her mother, ever since she could no longer go upstairs to her room, she couldn't close her eyes. Every time she tried to sleep, she saw those little dark eyes staring at her. She saw the crescent-shaped birthmark. She saw the tiny hands that seemed to reach for her. The hours crawled by. Ashley tossed and turned, fighting thoughts she knew were dangerous. She couldn't cling to that possibility. She couldn't let herself believe. But when the sun rose and she still hadn't slept a wink, Ashley made a decision. She had to find out the truth, even if it was just to prove to herself she was wrong. She got up early, made breakfast for her mother, and set out her pills beside the bed. Then she took her motorcycle and headed to Beverly Hills, even though she knew it was too early for a delivery. She parked on a street near Bradley's mansion and watched. She wanted to see if she could learn more about the baby, about how he'd ended up there. But she also knew she couldn't just knock on the door and start asking questions. The man already found her strange enough. That's when she saw a middle-aged woman stepping out of the house next door, walking toward Bradley's mansion. Ashley got off her motorcycle and approached, pretending to be looking for an address. "Excuse me, do you know the family that lives in this house?" she asked, pointing to the mansion. The woman looked at her curiously. "I know Bradley, yes, why?" "Well, I work as a nanny, and I heard he's looking for someone to take care of the baby. I wanted to know more about the family before applying." The neighbor seemed excited at the prospect of a conversation. "Oh, what a sad story, right? His wife passed away during childbirth. Poor Bradley, left alone with the baby. He doesn't know the first thing about kids, that man." "His wife died in childbirth?" Ashley tried to keep her voice steady. "Yes, a tragedy. Jennifer was such a sweet woman. They tried for years to have children, went through so many treatments. When she finally got pregnant, we all thought it would be the family's greatest joy. But unfortunately," the woman shook her head sadly, "was the baby born premature?" "Yes, 7 months. But he's developing well, thank God. Bradley hired the best nannies, but none of them lasted long. The man is hard to deal with when he's stressed. 7 months, premature." The pieces were falling into place in a way that made Ashley's heart race. "Do you know which hospital the baby was born in?" "At Cedars Medical Center, right here in Beverly Hills." "Why so many questions about the birth?" "Oh, I just like to know the medical history of the children I take care of, so I'm prepared for any emergencies." The neighbor nodded, seeming to find that reasonable. "Well, if you get the job, it'll be a blessing for that child. Bradley really needs the help." Ashley thanked her and went back to her motorcycle, her mind working quickly. Cedars Medical Center. That wasn't the same hospital where her daughter had been born. She had given birth at South Bronx Community Hospital, far from here. But that didn't mean anything. Hospitals transfer patients, especially in emergencies. She decided she needed to dig deeper. First, she'd go to Cedars Medical Center to try and find information about baby Ethan's birth. Then, she'd return to South Bronx Community Hospital to review her own daughter's birth records. It was a risky plan. She didn't know if she could even access the information, but she had to try. Cedars Medical Center was a modern, imposing building, clearly private and expensive. Ashley felt out of place walking through the bright, well-decorated halls. She was used to the reality of public hospitals, where everything was simpler and more functional. At the reception desk, a well-dressed young woman greeted her with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Good morning. I'd like to speak to someone about a baby born here about 6 months ago. I'm the family's new nanny and need some medical information." Do you have authorization from the family to access those records? Ashley's stomach dropped. Of course she'd need authorization. Not yet, but I can arrange it. Could you tell me what documents are required? The receptionist explained the bureaucratic process, which involved forms signed by the parents and witnesses. It would be impossible to get without Bradley knowing. Ashley thanked her and left the hospital, frustrated but not defeated. She needed a different approach. Then she remembered Mrs. Jenkins, a woman she'd known for years who worked in cleaning at several hospitals in the area. If anyone could help her uncover information without going through official channels, it was her. She found Mrs. Jenkins late in the afternoon, just finishing her shift at South Bronx Community Hospital, where Ashley had given birth. The 60-year-old woman greeted her with her usual warmth. "Ashley, my dear, how are you and your mother?" "We're fine, Mrs. Jenkins. Actually, I wanted to ask you for a favor." "Go ahead, dear." Ashley took a deep breath before telling her story. She explained about the delivery at the mansion, the baby she had cared for, and the birthmark identical to her daughter's. Mrs. Jenkins listened in silence, her face serious. "Ashley, are you sure about what you're saying? This is a very serious accusation." "I know, Mrs. Jenkins. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's just a coincidence, but I need to find out. I can't live with this doubt." The older woman grew thoughtful for a moment. "You know, dear, in all these years working in hospitals, I've seen things I shouldn't have, especially back then, 2 years ago. There was a head nurse here, Patricia Miller, who was fired for irregularities." Ashley's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of irregularities?" "We never knew for sure, but there were rumors about forged documents, about wealthy families getting babies in questionable ways. Patricia was fired overnight and no one ever spoke of it again. Do you know where I can find this Patricia? I heard she's working at a small clinic in Queens Village, St. Mary's Clinic, I think. But Ashley, dear, be careful. If your suspicions are right, you're dealing with dangerous people. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now, back to the story. That night, Ashley could barely eat. Her mother noticed something was wrong, but she made up an excuse about work troubles. She couldn't worry the woman who already suffered so much from arthritis. After her mother fell asleep, Ashley stayed in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, planning her next steps. First, she would find this nurse Patricia. Then, she'd try to uncover more details about what had happened the day her daughter was born. But she also knew she had to be careful. If there really was something sinister behind baby Ethan's birth, she couldn't just accuse without proof. And if she was wrong, she could ruin an innocent family's life. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Ashley? It's Bradley Thompson." Her heart raced. "Hello, Mr. Thompson. Is something wrong?" "Ethan's been crying for 2 hours. None of the nannies I interviewed today could calm him down. Could you come over again? I'll pay well, of course." Ashley closed her eyes. This was exactly the opportunity she needed to see the baby again, to observe more details that could confirm or dismiss her suspicions. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I can be there in an hour." "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this helps." On the way to Beverly Hills, Ashley tried to prepare herself emotionally. She couldn't show any suspicion. She had to be professional, care for the baby like she would any other child. But when she arrived at the mansion and heard the desperate cries coming from upstairs, all her maternal instincts flared up again. Bradley greeted her with visible gratitude on his tired face. "Ashley, thank God you're here. He hasn't stopped crying since 8 tonight." As she climbed the stairs, she tried to take in details of the house she'd missed the night before. Framed photos lined the walls, Bradley and a beautiful blonde woman in happy moments, wedding photos, vacations, intimate snapshots. In the baby's room, the scene was the same as the night before. Ethan was crying inconsolably in his crib, red-faced from exertion. But this time, when Ashley approached and reached out to pick him up, something even more remarkable happened. The baby didn't just stop crying. He smiled, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his whole little face. "Oh my God," Bradley murmured behind her. "He never smiles like that for anyone. Not even for me." Ashley felt tears prick her eyes. She held the baby against her chest, and he snuggled into her as if it were the most natural place in the world. Tiny hands clutched her shirt, and she could feel his little heartbeat against hers. "He's hungry," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "When was the last time he fed?" "I tried giving him a bottle an hour ago, but he refused." "I'll try again." Sitting in the nursing chair beside the crib, Ashley offered the bottle to the baby. He took it immediately, his little eyes fixed on her face as he drank. While feeding him, she took the chance to study every detail: the shape of his ear, the curve of his eyebrows, the texture of his fine hair. Everything felt familiar, like looking into a mirror of the past. "Can I ask you something about his mother?" she said softly. Bradley, who was leaning against the doorframe, sighed. "Go ahead." Was the pregnancy smooth? It was complicated from the start. Jennifer had terrible morning sickness in the first few months, then blood pressure issues. She had to be on bed rest almost the entire time. And the delivery? It was an emergency. She went into labor in the middle of the night. We rushed to the hospital, but by the time we got there, she was almost out of time. The doctor said a C-section was best, because the baby was in a difficult position. Ashley nodded, pretending to understand. "That must have been so hard for you." "It was the worst day of my life," Bradley said quietly. "Losing Jennifer and almost losing Ethan too, if it weren't for the medical team. But Ethan is okay, right? Even though he was premature?" "Yes, thank God. He spent a few weeks in the NICU, but he recovered perfectly. He's a healthy baby." The baby had finished the bottle and was dozing in Ashley's arms. She watched him sleep, memorizing every detail of his peaceful little face. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something a bit personal?" "Sure." "Did you and your wife do a lot of treatments to get pregnant?" He looked at her curiously. "We did. Why do you ask?" "It's just... Well, my sister's been trying to get pregnant for years and is going through treatments. I was wondering if you had any tips or a doctor to recommend." It was a lie, of course. Ashley didn't have a sister, but she needed information. "We tried for 5 years," Bradley shared. "We did IVF 3 times with no success. Jennifer was devastated. The doctors said she had issues with her tubes and ovaries. The chances were slim. And then she got pregnant naturally." "It was a miracle," he said, a sad smile crossing his face. "After all those years of trying, it happened naturally. Jennifer said it was the happiest time of her life." Ashley nodded, but something about the story didn't add up. If the woman had serious fertility issues and failed 3 rounds of IVF, how did she conceive naturally? It was possible, but unlikely. "Do you have the doctor's card who handled the pregnancy? For my sister?" "Yes, I do. Dr. Richard Wilson at Cedars Medical Center, an excellent professional." Ashley memorized the name, another lead to investigate. "Well, I think he's going to sleep now," she said, gently placing Ethan in the crib. The baby settled without protest, already in a deep sleep. "You have a special gift with him," Bradley said. Would it be possible for you to come a few times a week while I look for a permanent nanny?" "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I can come whenever you need." "Great. And Ashley, thank you. You saved my night again." On her way home, Ashley felt a mix of hope and fear growing in her chest. Every conversation, every detail she uncovered deepened her suspicions, but she also knew she was treading on dangerous ground. If her suspicions were correct, if Ethan was truly her daughter, it meant there was a conspiracy involving doctors, nurses, and falsified documents. Powerful people who wouldn't hesitate to destroy her if they found out what she was investigating. Yet she also knew she couldn't give up, not now that she had held that child in her arms and felt the inexplicable connection between them. The next morning, after making sure her mother was comfortable with breakfast and her medication, Ashley took her motorcycle and headed to Queens Village. Finding St. Mary's Clinic wasn't hard. It was a small, simple building, a far cry from the luxurious Cedars Medical Center. At the front desk, a young woman greeted her with little interest. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Nurse Patricia Miller." "Patricia doesn't see patients anymore. She only works in administration now. It's about a specific case. It's personal." The receptionist studied her more closely. I'll see if she can meet with you. What's your name? Ashley Johnson. A few minutes later, a woman in her 50s appeared at the front desk. She was thin, with graying hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. You wanted to speak with me? Yes, Miss Patricia. It's about a case from 2 years ago at South Bronx Community Hospital. The woman's face hardened instantly. I haven't worked there in a long time. I know, but I really need your help. It's about my daughter. Patricia glanced around nervously. I can't talk here. Let's go to the back room. The room was small and cluttered, filled with stacks of files and papers. Patricia closed the door and turned to Ashley with a defensive expression. Look, whatever you've heard about me, it's not true. I always did my job properly. Ms. Patricia, my daughter was born premature at South Bronx Community Hospital 2 years ago. The doctors told me she didn't survive, but they never let me see her, never gave me clear explanations. The nurse visibly tensed. And what does that have to do with me? Recently, I found a baby with physical features identical to my daughter, born around the same time, also premature. And I heard you worked at South Bronx Community Hospital back then. Patricia closed her eyes for a moment, as if wrestling with herself. Even if I knew something, I couldn't tell you. Do you understand there are powerful people involved in this kind of situation? Ashley's heart raced. It was almost a confession. Miss Patricia, I just want the truth about my daughter. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want money. I just need to know if she's alive. The older woman studied her face for a long moment. What was your full name and the date of birth? Ashley provided the details and saw recognition flicker in Patricia's eyes. I remember you, she said quietly. You were alone. No family to support you. Young, scared. Do you remember what happened to my daughter? Patricia sank heavily into a chair. Your daughter was born healthy, Ashley. Premature, but healthy. She needed special care, but she had every chance to survive. The words hit Ashley like a bolt of lightning. She gripped the table to steady herself. Then why did they tell me she had... Because there was a waiting list, Patricia said, her voice thick with remorse. Wealthy families paying fortunes for healthy babies, especially babies from young mothers with no resources, no family to ask questions. My daughter was sold, Ashley whispered, nausea rising. I can't give you details. I can't risk more than I already have. But if you found a child you believe is your daughter, perhaps you should investigate further. How can I prove it? A DNA test. It's the only way to be absolutely sure. But how can I do that without the adoptive father suspecting? Patricia hesitated again. There's a way to collect genetic material without the person noticing. A few strands of hair, saliva on a toy. I know a discreet lab that can run the test without asking questions. She scribbled an address on a piece of paper and handed it to Ashley. But listen carefully, if you go through with this, there's no turning back. And you can't involve me. If anyone asks, you were never here. I understand. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. You have no idea what this means to me. I just hope you find the peace you're looking for, my dear. And be careful. There are people who made a lot of money from this scheme. They won't like being exposed. Leaving the clinic, Ashley felt a mix of relief and terror. Finally, she had an answer to the doubts that had haunted her for 2 years. Her daughter was alive, but now she had to prove it, and do so without putting the child in danger. The lab Patricia had recommended was on a quiet street in downtown Manhattan. The owner, a middle-aged man with thick glasses, greeted her without questions when she mentioned Patricia's name. I need a confidential DNA test, she explained. What kind of material can you get? Hair, saliva, maybe. Hair with the root would be ideal. As for the comparison sample, will it be your blood? Yes. The test will be ready in 5 days. Cost $1,000. It was nearly all the money Ashley had saved over the past few months, but she didn't hesitate. Done. They collected her blood sample right then, and the man explained how to gather the baby's material without contamination. Remember, it has to be discreet, and when you bring the sample, come alone. That night, Bradley called again. Ethan was crying, and the nannies he had interviewed couldn't calm him down. Ashley arrived at the mansion with her heart racing. This time, she had a mission beyond just caring for the baby. Ethan greeted her with the same wide smile as the night before. As she fed him and changed his diaper, Ashley looked for an opportunity to collect what she needed. It was while brushing the baby's fine hair that she noticed a few strands caught in the bristles. With careful movements, she managed to pull out 3 strands with roots and discreetly tucked them into a small envelope she had brought. "He's really attached to you," Bradley remarked, watching from the doorway. "Babies can sense when someone truly loves them," Ashley replied, and she realized it was true. She loved this child with an intensity that defied all rational explanation. "Ashley, can I make you an offer?" "Of course." "How would you like to work here every day? Be Ethan's official nanny. I'll pay $5,000 a month plus benefits." It was more money than she made in 3 months of work, enough to care for her mother and still have some left. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Thompson." "So, do you accept?" Ashley looked down at the baby sleeping in her arms. If Ethan was really her daughter, working there every day would be a blessing. She could watch her grow, make sure she was well cared for, but it would also be torture, raising her own child without being able to reveal the truth. Watching another man be called dad, living a lie every single day. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but I hope you say yes. Ethan needs you." Over the next 3 days, Ashley split her time between her regular delivery job and visits to the mansion. With each meeting, her certainty that Ethan was her daughter grew. The child responded to her in a way that was unique, smiling only for her, calming only in her arms. Bradley began treating her with more respect, seeing how essential she was to the baby's well-being. He even offered to let her bring her mother to live in the mansion, since there were spare staff rooms available. "No need, Mr. Thompson, but thank you for the offer. It's just that I've noticed how devoted you are to Ethan. I want you to be comfortable here." On the 5th day, Ashley went to pick up the test results. Her hands trembled as the lab owner handed her the sealed envelope. "The result is positive," he said simply. 99.7% probability of relation. She's your daughter." The world seemed to stop around Ashley. Even though she had expected that result, hearing the confirmation was a shock. Ethan was her daughter. Her daughter was alive, healthy, just a few miles away. But she was also being raised by a man who sincerely believed he was her father, a man who loved her, who would do anything to ensure her well-being. What would she do now? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Ashley spent the entire night awake, staring at the test results. The words 99.7% probability of relation seemed to leap off the page, confirming what her heart already knew. Her daughter was alive. She had a different name, a different life, but she was alive and well. In the morning, she called Bradley and accepted the job offer. She needed to stay close to Ethan, needed to make sure her daughter was safe while she figured out what to do. "That's wonderful news," Bradley said, clearly relieved. "Can you start Monday?" "I can start today if you'd like." "Even better. Ethan will be thrilled." During the first few weeks as the official nanny, Ashley rode an emotional roller coaster. On one hand, she was closer to her daughter than she had been in 2 years. She saw every smile, every milestone, every moment of growth. Ethan had started crawling and loved exploring the house. His first words were Mama and Dada, and Ashley's heart ached every time she heard the child call Bradley Daddy, because for all intents and purposes, he was the father. He was the one who woke up in the middle of the night when Ethan had a fever. He was the one who bought toys, clothes, who worried about every stage of development. Bradley loved that child with absolute sincerity, and Ethan loved him too. Whenever he saw Bradley coming home from work, he'd crawl quickly toward him, smiling and babbling. It was a genuine father-son bond, built over months of care and affection. That made everything even more complicated for Ashley. How could she destroy that family? How could she take a child from the arms of a father who loved her, even if he wasn't the biological father? But there were also moments when the injustice of the situation choked her, when Ethan fell and ran to her for comfort, when he slept in her arms and she could imagine raising him as her own. when she looked into those little dark eyes and saw reflections of herself. One day, while Ethan played in the mansion's garden, Ashley decided to broach the subject indirectly with Bradley. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask you something about Ethan's adoption?" "Adoption?" He looked confused. "There was no adoption. Ethan is my biological son." "I'm sorry, I phrased that poorly. It's just that sometimes I wonder what it must be like for adoptive parents, raising a child who isn't biologically theirs, but whom they love as if they were." Bradley grew thoughtful. "I imagine it's exactly like raising a biological child. Love doesn't come from blood. It comes from daily care, from shared moments. If I found out tomorrow that Ethan wasn't my biological son, it wouldn't change a thing. He's my son in every way that matters." The words were like a knife to Ashley's heart. Bradley was saying exactly what she needed to hear, but in a way that made her situation even more impossible. What if the birth mother showed up wanting her child back? "That's a tough question," he admitted. "Legally, it would depend on the circumstances, but emotionally, it would be devastating. For the child, especially. Ethan knows me as his father. Separating us would be traumatic for him." Ashley nodded, but inside she was shattered. Bradley was right. Ethan had known him as his father for over 6 months. He was the only family the child had ever known. Would it be fair to destroy that stability just to satisfy her own maternal longing? That night she called Mrs. Jenkins and told her about the test results. "My dear, what a complicated situation," the older woman said. "But you have to think about what's best for the child, not for you." "I know, Mrs. Jenkins, but I also know I have rights. She's my daughter. And has this man done anything wrong? Does he mistreat the child?" "No, he's a wonderful father, loves Ethan more than life itself." "Then you have a very difficult decision ahead, and I can't make it for you." Over the following weeks, Ashley closely observed the dynamic between Bradley and Ethan. What she saw was a genuine bond of love and care. Bradley didn't just love the child. He had built his entire life around him. He'd hired the best nannies, the best doctors. He'd cut back on work to spend more time at home. He'd turned the mansion into a safe, nurturing space for a child. Ethan, in turn, thrived in that environment. He was a happy, healthy child, surrounded by love and care. He had everything a child could want: security, comfort, education, and above all, a father who adored him. Ashley began to question whether she had the right to destroy that happiness. Her daughter was safe. She was loved and cared for by someone who could offer opportunities Ashley could never provide. But there was also the matter of the truth. Bradley was living a lie. He believed Ethan was the son of his late wife, when in reality, the child had been stolen from a mother who had mourned him for 2 years, and there were other families who might be in the same situation. If the baby-selling scheme Patricia had described was real, other mothers could be suffering the same pain she had endured. The situation grew even more complicated when Ethan turned 7 months old and Bradley began talking about baptism. "I want it to be a big celebration," he said as Ethan played on the living room floor. "Jennifer always dreamed of our son's baptism. I'll throw the party she would have wanted." "That's a beautiful idea, Mr. Bradley. And I'd like you to be his godmother. I know it's not traditional, but you're the most important person in Ethan's life after me." The offer left Ashley speechless. Being the godmother of her own daughter while keeping the secret of her true identity. It was too ironic. "It's an honor, Mr. Bradley, but don't you think you should choose someone from the family?" "I don't have close family, and Jennifer's family." "Well, they never approved of our marriage." "You're the right choice." That night, Ashley made a decision. She couldn't live this lie any longer. She had to tell Bradley the truth, no matter the consequences. But when she arrived at the mansion the next day, she found Bradley visibly shaken. "Ashley, thank goodness you're here. I have news about Ethan." "What kind of news?" "Remember I mentioned DNA tests for Jennifer's inheritance? I finally got the results." Ashley's heart stopped. "And?" Bradley ran a hand through his hair, clearly distressed. "The test came back negative. Ethan isn't biologically mine or Jennifer's." The world seemed to spin around Ashley. Bradley had discovered on his own what she had known for weeks. "How is this possible?" She feigned surprise. I don't know. I don't understand. Jennifer got pregnant. I followed the whole pregnancy. I was there for the birth. How can Ethan not be our son? Ashley saw the pain and confusion in his eyes. It was time to tell the truth. Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you about something important. What is it? It's about Ethan and about me. She took a deep breath and began her story. She spoke about the daughter she lost 2 years ago, about the birth at South Bronx Community Hospital, about the doctors who said the baby hadn't survived. She talked about the birthmark, about her suspicions, about the investigation she had done. She showed the DNA test results proving Ethan was her daughter. Bradley listened in silence, his face growing paler by the minute. Are you saying Ethan is your daughter? He asked when she finished. I'm saying our daughter was stolen from me 2 years ago and sold to your wife. That's impossible. Jennifer got pregnant naturally. I saw her belly grow. I felt the baby kick. Mr. Thompson, your wife may have faked the pregnancy or used a prosthetic belly. It's more common than you think. He shook his head, refusing to believe it. No, Jennifer would never do that. She loved me, she was honest. Maybe she was desperate to give you a child. Maybe she did it out of love. Bradley abruptly stood up from his chair. Get out, now. Mr. Thompson, get out. You're a con artist. You're trying to steal my son with this absurd story. I have proof. The DNA test. It could be forged. You could have bribed the lab. I don't believe a word you've said. Ashley felt tears streaming down her face. Please, I'm just asking you to consider the possibility. Your wife had fertility issues. After years of trying, how did she get pregnant naturally? Enough, I want you out of my house and never to come back. And if you try to approach Ethan again, I'll call the police. From upstairs came the sound of Ethan crying. Ashley looked toward the staircase, her heart breaking. Can I at least say goodbye to him? No. Leave now before I do something I'll regret. Ashley grabbed her purse and walked toward the door, tears blurring her vision. On the threshold, she turned one last time. Mr. Thompson, I understand your anger. I know what it's like to love a child and fear losing them, but one day you'll want to know the truth. And when that day comes, I'll be here. She left the mansion knowing she had lost not just her job, but also the only connection she had to her daughter. Over the following days, Ashley sank into depression. Losing Ethan a second time was even more painful than the first. The first time she had believed her daughter was dead. Now she knew she was alive, but out of reach. Her mother sensed something was very wrong, but Ashley couldn't explain. How could she tell her she had found and lost the granddaughter the woman never knew existed? A week after being thrown out of the mansion, Ashley received an unexpected call. It was Bradley. Ashley, it's me. Mr. Thompson. We need to talk. Can you come here? Are you sure? I am. Please, come. When she arrived at the mansion, Ashley found Bradley visibly shaken. He led her to the living room where a folder of documents was spread across the coffee table. Ever since you left, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you said. I started investigating on my own. And what did you find? Things I wish I hadn't, he said heavily. Jennifer really couldn't get pregnant. The doctors were clear about that. But somehow she showed up pregnant. Did you talk to the doctor who monitored the pregnancy? I did, Dr. Richard Wilson. He confirmed he monitored Jennifer for 9 months. But when I showed the DNA results, he got very nervous. He said he couldn't comment on the case. Ashley nodded, letting him continue. I also looked into Cedars Medical Center. Ethan was indeed born there, but he was transferred from another hospital just a few hours before. They said it was an emergency, but there's no clear record of where he came from. And what about your wife? What did you find out? Bradley closed his eyes, as if the next words were physically painful. Jennifer left a diary. I found it hidden in her closet. In the last pages, she confesses everything. He pulled a small notebook from his bag and flipped to a marked page. She writes about a scheme she discovered through a friend. Families who couldn't have children could adopt babies from vulnerable mothers. It wasn't technically illegal because the documents were altered to make it seem like the child was born to the adoptive mother. Did your wife know she was part of something wrong? She knew. and she felt guilty. But she was desperate to give me a child. She thought our marriage wouldn't last if she couldn't get pregnant. Bradley turned several pages in the diary. Here she writes about you. I chose a young mother, single, with no family. The baby is perfect, healthy, beautiful, smart. The mother won't even miss him because she can't raise a child. The words hit Ashley like a slap in the face. She was wrong, she said softly. I missed him so much. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything you went through, for everything we did to you. Ashley looked at the man she had learned to respect over the past few weeks. She saw genuine pain in his eyes, the weight of a discovery that had completely changed his worldview. What do we do now? She asked. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. Ethan is my son in every way that matters, but he's also your son, and your rights were violated. And Ethan, what's best for him? That's the hardest question, Bradley admitted. He knows me as his father. Taking him away would be traumatic, but keeping him from you isn't fair either. They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in thought. Can I make a suggestion? Ashley finally said. Go ahead. What if we try a solution that works for everyone? You'd still be Ethan's father, but I could also be part of his life. As his godmother, his babysitter, as a family, you'd accept that, even knowing he's your son. I would if it's best for him. I don't want to destroy the stability you've built. I just want to be part of my son's life. Bradley looked at her with a mix of surprise and admiration. You really love Ethan, don't you? I do, more than my own life. So do I. Maybe we can find a solution that works for all of us. In the days that followed, they began discussing possibilities. Bradley consulted lawyers about the legal situation, while Ashley researched shared custody arrangements in similar cases. What they found was that the situation was legally complex. Ethan had been registered as Bradley and Jennifer's son through falsified documents. Technically, Bradley had no legal right to the child, but Ashley would also face challenges proving her rights, since she had signed her daughter's death certificate. The best solution would be a mutual agreement, Bradley's lawyer explained. Something that acknowledges both parties' rights without harming the child. That's when they reached an innovative decision. Ashley would move into the guest house on the mansion's property. Officially, she'd remain Ethan's nanny. Unofficially, she'd be the mother who got to care for her son every day. Bradley would cover all of Ashley's mother's medical expenses and fund her education so she could graduate as a teacher. An old dream she had abandoned when she became pregnant. It's only fair, he said, when they signed the informal agreement. You lost 2 years of your daughter's life because of my wife's lies. It's the least I can do. The adjustment wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, especially when Ethan started talking and clearly preferred Ashley over anyone else. Bradley had to deal with jealousy and the insecurity of not being the biological father. Ashley, in turn, had to learn to share motherhood. She couldn't make important decisions about Ethan without consulting Bradley. She couldn't discipline him the way a typical mother would. She had to maintain the appearance of being just the nanny when visitors were around. But little by little, they found a balance. Bradley began to see Ashley not as a threat, but as a partner in raising Ethan. She helped him with big decisions, offered different perspectives, and clearly loved the child just as much as he did. Ethan, in turn, thrived in that environment of double love. He was an exceptionally happy child, surrounded by care and attention. He started calling Bradley Daddy and Ashley Mommy Ash, a childish version of her name that melted both their hearts. He's a lucky boy, the pediatrician remarked during a routine checkup. It's rare to see a child so well-adjusted and happy. You're doing an excellent job. The most touching moment came on Ethan's first birthday. Bradley organized a small party, just a few close friends and Ashley's mother, who finally met the grandchild she thought she'd lost. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, Ethan was in Ashley's arms but reached out for Bradley. The three hugged as they sang, and Ashley realized this was her family. Unconventional, untraditional, but real. Thank you, Bradley whispered in her ear as Ethan blew out the candle. For not destroying our family. For finding a way to build something better. Thank you for sharing him with me, she replied. for understanding that love doesn't shrink when it's shared. 2 years later, when Ethan was about to turn 3, he drew his family at preschool. The picture showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall man in a suit, a woman with dark hair, and a small child in the middle. "Who are these people?" the teacher asked. "My family," Ethan answered simply. "Daddy, Mommy Ash, and me." When the teacher showed the drawing to Bradley and Ashley, they were both moved. "He gets it," Bradley said quietly. "Somehow he understands he has 2 people who love him as parents. And he's happy with it," Ashley added. "He doesn't see anything strange about having a different kind of family." In truth, Ethan was more than happy. He was a secure, loved, and well-cared-for child. He had the father who raised him from infancy and the birth mother who fought to find him. He had Grandma Dorothy, Ashley's mother, who spoiled him with grandmotherly affection. He had a big house to play in and every opportunity money could buy. But more than anything, he had love. So much love. Bradley never married again. He said his family was complete as it was. Ashley also didn't pursue another relationship, dedicating her life to her studies and raising Ethan. They settled into a routine that worked for everyone. Ethan spent mornings with Ashley, who took him to school and helped with homework. Afternoons were with Bradley, who left work early to play and go out with his son. Evenings were family time, with dinners where the 3 talked about their day. On weekends, they did activities together: parks, the zoo, movies. To outsiders, they looked like a traditional family. And in a way, they were. When Ethan turned 4, he started asking questions about his story. "Mommy Ash, why didn't you live here when I was a baby?" "Because I didn't know where you were, sweetheart. But when I found out, I came running." "And did Daddy always know where I was?" "Always, my love. Daddy took care of you from the moment you were born." "So you're both my parents?" "Yes, sweetheart. You're lucky to have 2 parents who love you very much." Ethan seemed satisfied with the simplified explanation. To him, that was his normal reality. He didn't know any other kind of family. The full truth would come when he was older, when he could understand the complexities of the situation. But for now, it was enough to know he was unconditionally loved by 2 people who would do anything for him. Bradley started calling Ashley partner instead of nanny. He introduced her to friends as Ethan's co-mom, a term they'd coined to explain their unique situation. Ashley graduated with top marks in education. Her thesis was on non-traditional family structures and their impact on child development, based on her own experience. "You should publish this," Bradley suggested after reading it. "There are so many families who could benefit from your perspective." "Maybe one day," she replied, "when Ethan's older and can decide if he wants our story to be public." Ashley's mother, Dorothy, improved significantly with the proper medical care Bradley arranged. She moved into a comfortable guest house on the property and became the doting grandmother Ethan adored. "My granddaughter gave me a wonderful great-grandson," she'd often say, referring to Ashley as her granddaughter since she'd raised her after her own daughter lost her parents. Ashley's finances also stabilized completely. Bradley insisted on paying her a generous salary, covering all family expenses. She had a healthy savings account for the future and had bought a small but cozy house where they could move if they ever decided to leave the mansion. "You never know," she explained to Bradley. "You might remarry, you might want privacy, we don't want to be a burden." "You'll never be a burden," he replied. "You're my family." The illegal baby-selling case that had taken Ethan from Ashley was never officially investigated. Bradley and Ashley decided not to pursue legal action to protect Ethan from the publicity and trauma it could cause, but they knew there were likely other families in the same situation. Patricia, the former nurse, had hinted at least half a dozen similar cases. "One day when Ethan's grown, maybe we can do something to help other families," Ashley said. "For now, our priority is protecting him and giving him the best childhood possible." Bradley agreed. They'd found a solution that worked for their unique situation, but they knew not all families would be so lucky. When Ethan turned 5, something beautiful happened. He was playing in the yard when he scraped his knee slightly. He ran inside, yelling, "Mommy! Daddy!" but paused at the living room doorway where they both were. For a moment he seemed unsure whom to go to. Then he opened his arms and ran toward both at once, jumping onto the couch between them. "I hurt my knee," he said dramatically, waiting for comfort from both. Bradley cleaned the scrape while Ashley put on the band-aid. Ethan got kisses and cuddles from both and was soon smiling again. "There you go, my prince," Ashley said, kissing his forehead. "Now you can go back to playing," Bradley added, ruffling his hair. Ethan looked at them with those dark, clever eyes Ashley knew so well. "I love you both," he said simply, before running back to the yard. Bradley and Ashley exchanged glances, both with tears in their eyes. "He knows," Bradley said softly. "Somehow he knows this is his family exactly as it should be." "And he's happy," Ashley added. "He doesn't feel like he's missing anything. He feels like he's gaining double the love." In that moment, they both knew they'd made the right decision. Ethan would grow up knowing he was deeply loved by two people who put his well-being above their own desires and pride. Years later, when Ethan became an adult, he would learn the whole story. He'd know about the obstacles his parents had faced, the tough decisions they'd made, and the love that guided them through an impossible situation. But for now, he was simply a happy child, surrounded by love, growing up in a family that had found its own unique way to work. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story. Do you believe Ashley and Bradley made the right choice raising Ethan together? How would you react in such a complex situation? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories like this one.